second to recalibrate. The same is true when we're in great rehearsals. With living in the language of music becoming, as I mentioned this morning in that session, even our pulses begin to become aligned with those around us. And the interruptions of speaking can be helpful, can be focus-inducing, or can be interruptive. So, how do we engender this language of living in the language, this ability to live in the language of music and still say what needs to be said? This is not the language of music. The language of rehearsal is not the real world. We create in that very special environment a situation that is not normal. There is nothing about what we do in rehearsal that's normal. We don't sit that way in the real world. We don't breathe that way in the real world. We don't live with those words in the real world. We don't breathe that way. We don't engage with other people in the real world that way. There are very few times, but perhaps somebody was talking to me not too long ago that there are almost no times where we sit for 2 hours and don't say anything. And that might be, let me see a movie. Might be the only time in our lives where we sit for 2 hours and don't say anything. Rehearsals, we could be in that rehearsal for an hour and a half or 2 hours and be completely engaged in that very special moment, which is quite remarkable. It is not the real world. We have taken people to a world of beauty, to a world of thought, to a world of expression that opens up the possibility of saying what's on our hearts in a non-threatening way. That we say together what's on our hearts. This is not the real world. We don't live on a day-to-day basis in the language of music. We live in the language of speech. And so living for 90 minutes in the language of music is a blessing and one of the reasons people come to sing in choirs. So, respond. What would you say are the characteristics of a great rehearsal? Anybody? Say it again. Talk to me a little more. What do you mean by pacing? Okay. He said pacing, it flows. You feel that one thing leads to the next, then leads to the next. Good. Okay. Good. What else?
I think efficiency, which is a little bit different. You focus on the important parts, the most challenging parts, and you can pass through the parts that may not be the most rehearsed. So you're constantly focusing on the greater effort.
Yeah. Yep. Boy, that's something we learn over the course of a lifetime, isn't it? What needs our attention at what time? A lot of that dealing with our sessions, we talked this morning about setting a square and building a conductor's imagination. The better we know the music, the more we know where we need to spend the time. You know, and the closer we get to the vortex of the performance, whether it's a Sunday morning or if it's a concert performance, that vortex that says, okay, we used to have 20 minutes to work on those 12 bars, and now we have half a minute to work on those 12 bars. We become, at least I do, become more and more efficient the closer we get to the concert. Because there is no waste of time. And in fact, the closer I get to a concert, the more there will be times down the left side of my page that says 2:32 to 2:48 on the mirror, because we now know exactly what needs to be done and in the order that it needs to be done. Good. What else? Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, in a good rehearsal, you're singing and communicating, your singers communicating back. In perfect rehearsal, sometimes you have the sopranos, conversation on the side, then are lost when you start rehearsing the next item proportionally.
Yeah, good. I one time asked Rod Eichenberger, I was watching him lead an all-state rehearsals in Oklahoma, actually, years ago. And it was, if you know Rod, his rehearsals are very focused and quick-moving, and the kids were on board 100%. And I said, Rod, how do you engender that focus? And there was no talking, goofing off, how do you engender? He said, well, there's no time for that. I just don't give them any time for that. We're involved in music every second. Well, it's pretty, I mean, that's a wonderful goal, because when that happens and people are all on the same page, that's fantastic. You go to a different place. You go to a different level. What else? A great rehearsal.
I wish the whole rehearsal would be this way, but I feel like at least once during rehearsal we have made music
for beauty. There are opportunities to be taken to a place that we've never been to before. I used to spend, and I spend, in northern Michigan, in this Interlochen Arts Camp, a music camp for mostly high school students, but we just started a program, and I spent 17 summers there leading a choir. And we just started a program for adults called the Adult Choral Camp, and adults come from all over the country, actually. We spend a week together, we sing, and we have a good time, and then everybody goes back home. But a young woman came to me not too long ago, and she had been in the choir camp. She said, "I will never forget the first time we went out, and I've never heard those sounds before." And she said, "I just started crying because I've never heard that beauty before." Well, that's a situation. We all have those experiences. We've had those experiences ourselves, or we wouldn't have stuck it out this long. But those are the sort of experiences that bring people back to us, to that environment that we created together. What else?
Balance.
In what way?
Fast, slow,
Okay. Tenors and basses. My dream world. My dream world would be that God would make more tenors. And I don't want to make fewer sopranos. I don't want to make fewer sopranos. I'd like the sopranos. I'd like the tenors to grow into numbers, to reproduce more frequently, I guess is what I'm asking. The tenors would just clone themselves. That would be fantastic. We can clone that mastodon, that airy mastodon that they found someplace. We should be able to clone a few tenors, don't you? That would be fantastic. Absolutely. A great rehearsal has an incredible balance between slow, fast, stand, sit, move around, dramatic, gentle, emotional changes as well. And the better we are at playing rehearsals, the more no one is aware of that. Great rehearsals, no one is aware of the artifice that's put it all, the craft that's put it all together. It's like a great concert. And every rehearsal is a performance. There are no rehearsals, there are only performances. How many times have I said that to students? There are no rehearsals, it's always a performance. We bring our game no matter where we go. And so, when we build a concert that is fast and slow and varied and interesting and creative, that's what we bring to the rehearsal as well. Okay, these are all wonderful things, and I have a few more that we might talk about, and then we'll live in a few. I observed a wonderful musician's rehearsal a few years ago, and I made some notes. He didn't know I was doing this. And so I made some, I'm not going to tell you what it is. But I made some notes because I just watched him relate to a choir that he'd never seen before. And it was a high school group, and it was in a summer public school in Michigan. The MSVMA, Michigan School Vocal Music Association, has workshops in the summer, and this was a high school group, sort of a little bit of an honor choir, and he was working with them. And I kept some notes, and in no particular order, some of the characteristics that I noted in his rehearsal was that he was fully engaged every second. There was never a time in his rehearsal where I sensed that he checked out. Hence, there was never a time that I sensed that those singers had checked out. There was a real engagement all the time. There was no wasted time, which meant that there was no time for anybody to wander. And yet, somehow it didn't feel hectic. It didn't feel frantic. It felt focused and engaged and interesting. He came to that rehearsal with a strong and commanding dream. I just sensed that there was no other way that it was going to be, that he couldn't even conceive of another way to make this music happen. It was his dream. Here was his imagination for this piece, and we're going there. Without him saying, now come along, we're going to make sure. There was just a sense of, well, the diction was improving, the intonation was improving, the sense of musical line was improving. He had a goal, and he went for it, and he was energized and vibrant and rhythmically engaged. I think most great rehearsals have rhythm as the core of their rehearsal. I'll say that again. I think most great rehearsals have rhythm at the core of the rehearsal. We are, as conductors, percussionists. We are not singers. Because as a singer, my experience has been that singers tend to be a little more fluid with rhythmic precision. There tends to be a little more rubato, possibly. But percussionists are absolutely fastidious. And then on top of that percussion comes the rubato and the flexibility and the beautiful sound. But underneath, it's a sense of rhythmic direction. And we would call that an impulse, right? And if you remember Robert Shaw's use of count singing all that time, well, there was a reason for that, because things needed to line up and things needed to have direction. Most of us have a pulse, and and if we don't, I don't want to hear about it, because, well, I won't actually hear about it if we don't have a pulse. But most of us have a pulse, and that sense of where it's going is crucial. He didn't explain to us what he was after, he just did it and let us discover it for ourselves. It always drives me crazy when somebody says, now we're going to work on this piece, and in this piece we're going to work on intonation, and we're going to work on more articulation at the top of page 5, and at the bottom of page 7, that F sharp altos, you might mess that up, that might be, that F natural will be more comfortable, but after too much talking, all I want to do is hear it. All I want to do is say, do I like it? Do I not like it? Go directly to the piece of music, live in it. Let us make our own decisions about it. He said nothing about his plan. He said nothing about his methods. He just did it, and they were on board. And afterwards, then you can say, oh, well, the reason that happened was because of this, and the reason that we went there was because of this, and the reason that that piece followed that. And maybe we don't even evaluate because it just felt so natural. If you drive a really great car, you don't have, it can be an amazing machine, but you don't have to know how it works to enjoy it. You don't have to know how to make creme brulee to enjoy creme brulee. You just have to allow yourself the possibility of trying. There was very little talking in his rehearsal, maybe 85% doing and 15% talking. It was quite remarkable. They sang a lot. He engaged the whole body, his and theirs. He was moving, he was showing gestures a little like we were doing last night in that rehearsal. He was doing that sort of thing, they were doing that sort of thing, and there was a very large smile quotient, both on his part and their part, which was fantastic. They smiled, he smiled, he smiled, they smiled. He was completely unapologetic. No other way but his wonderful way. Sometimes I hear from people, well, my choir wouldn't ever do that. How do you know? Did you try it? And maybe they wouldn't, but maybe they haven't tasted the creme brulee yet. You know, maybe they don't realize how fantastic they would sound if they did it. You know what I mean? Gentlemen, maybe we don't realize that this could make the sound incredibly beautiful when we've only been doing it this way. We'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow in the male voice session. Maybe we've been putting the bowling ball on the top shelf too much when we actually could put the ping pong ball on and accomplish those upper notes with so much more ease. Same pitch all anyway. We'll talk about that tomorrow. He had high expectations from himself and them. I sensed that he absolutely knew the piece of music very well, and that he had expected himself to learn it, and he did very well, and they jumped right in. He knew the score well, he seldom looked at the score. He improvised the rehearsal, and it was based on a knowledge and imagination, based on the piece in front of him. Great rehearsals feel improvised. Great rehearsals feel improvised. I had a dear friend who in her young days of student teaching, she planned a really great rehearsal. She went in, and the supervising teacher was there, she did the rehearsal, and it wasn't long before she realized that the plan that she had wasn't the one that was going to work, and she adjusted and fixed it all, and the teacher tore her apart because she didn't follow her plan. And she thought, aren't we supposed to make music? Aren't we supposed to improvise based on what we are hearing at the time? Great rehearsals are improvised. It's not willy-nilly, it's not pointless, it's not unorganized to improvise. He had a million ideas, not just one set plan, and he tried idea after idea until it worked what he was going after. He expected them to adapt and to adopt, and he wore them down with energy and joy. And if it wasn't going to where he wanted it to go right away, he kept at it in a different tack, with energy and with a smile and with a sense of collaboration that was really quite remarkable. Another characteristic of the great rehearsal, time passed quickly. Great rehearsals, I think, are the ones that you say, is it really that time? That's fantastic, I had no idea. That doesn't always happen. For those of us who lead rehearsals, my rehearsal is always 1:10 to 2:30 in the afternoon. Sometimes, it's right after lunch, so sometimes those rehearsals can feel a little sluggish at times. But the great ones are those in which you sit down and you start working and you have brought people in, you've engaged them somehow, we made some great music and we focused and we adjusted and we finessed, and then we ended up and say, see you in a couple of days, and you say, that was fantastic. They had no idea what was behind the fun. They thought they were having a good time. They loved it. But they had no idea that their intonation was improving, that their diction was improving, that their sense of communication was improving, that their posture was improving, that their breathing was improving. They thought they were just having a great time. I sometimes do some, it's a little like eurythmics things with choirs. And I one time was working with an all-state choir in another state, and I was so frustrated with them at the beginning of it was a week-long all-state, in the summertime in that state. And I was so frustrated with them because they were too shy, they were too sweet, I wanted more energy, I wanted more direction, I wanted more rhythmic vitality, and so we started doing some rhythmic things. And it wasn't long until the core of the rhythmic interpulse began to take hold, and it was fantastic choir. And they dug in and made it really beautiful with great communication. And at the end, people were saying what they loved about it, and almost to the person I said, we loved dancing. I didn't realize that we were dancing. We were doing something that I thought was helping their interpulse, which did help their impulse, but they saw it as dancing, they saw it as having fun. I think that's terrific. He demonstrated beautifully. He's a wonderful singer himself. You don't have to demonstrate beautifully to shape a choral sound. I don't think it's a bad idea to demonstrate beautifully, and I don't think it's a bad idea to demonstrate poorly. I think it's important that we show them our dream once in a while with a sound that we make. And we certainly can say, I hear, and I'd love to hear, ooh. That's a demonstration. I didn't even sing. I hear, well, but I'd love to hear, oh, could we move to tones and happy, please? Automatically will fix things. Whether you want to go that way or not, it's perfectly fine. Everything is fair in rehearsal. The closer to concert time, the vortex is narrow and narrow, as I mentioned, and more refined and completely connected to every nuance. He spoke clearly and commandingly. The way we speak is the way that we will hear sounds back to us. So if we're wanting very beautiful vowels, it's not a bad idea to speak with very beautiful vowels. If we'd like the articulation to be clearer in the text that is sung, it's not a bad idea for us to speak that way. If we'd like things to be a little more organized, maybe the front of the choir room should be a little more organized. I had a mentor once say to me that he would always wear a jacket to the first rehearsal. Always wear a jacket to a first rehearsal, and then take it off and roll up his sleeves before the rehearsal began. Because that said, we're getting down to business here. He never said anything about it. He would just take the jacket off and roll up his sleeves, because we're going to work. And the front of the room would always be immaculate. Because that says, I care. That says that we know what we're going to do. I will always remember starting doctoral work at USC and walking into a rehearsal, I'm green, I didn't know where I was supposed to go, and on every chair was a name card. And it had my name on it. Well, that's fantastic. I didn't have to worry about where I was going to sit, where the bases were. I also knew that somebody cared enough to write my name. And number two, that somebody actually knew my name. Well, that was fantastic. I knew that at every first rehearsal would be here. I do it with Post-its now, but I always put, after we've done auditions or we know who's going to do it with a church choir, I used to do a church choir for 9 years or so at the Baptist Church in Ann Arbor. We would put a Post-it with, if there was some kind of 1 or some kind of 2, and with their name on it. And I then, not only did they think, oh, he cares about me, but I also planned who was sitting next to whom. I used to, I now conduct the choral union in Ann Arbor, which is a large 180-voice oratorio chorus. We sing often the Victoria's Symphony Orchestra. We do Messiah twice a year since 1870. 1879. I haven't been there since 1879. But some of the sopranos have been. No, that's not true. That is not true. That is not true. I do love the sopranos there. But they used to do 3 performances a year. We do 2 performances. We do a Saturday night, Sunday afternoon. And we do every note. So it's almost 3 hours. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes or so. It's a lot of music when you do a dress rehearsal on Friday night, and you do a concert on Saturday night, and on Sunday you do a full performance. So it's about 3 full messiahs in about 48 hours. It's a lot of, we're pretty tired. But there used to be 3. It used to be Thursday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon. And one time I was brave enough to say, you know, how many have done 20 messiahs or whatever, you know? And there will always be some people who will embarrass me. Then one lady came up and said, I think I've done 90. Because I've been in for 35 years, and we used to do 3 a week. That's a lot of messiahs. And it's also, if I have to remind you of anything, I have to constantly say, you need to look at the score. Because they sing from memory. They sing every note from memory. Because if we've made any marks or what the T is going to be, and we've done any editing, nobody looks at that anymore because they just sing it from memory. It's so fun to sing from memory. I constantly look at the score! Come on. Stop looking at me. Now, I don't say that very often to many people, but I do to them. It's a long way of saying that when I started with that group about 11 years ago, soprano sat here, and bass sat here, tenor sat here, alto sat here, and I was a new kid on the block with them, and they've been around a long time, and so we would do rehearsals, and for about the first year, it was okay, it was fine, they liked me on it then. But then I thought, having been to a rehearsal of Chicago Symphony Chorus, a fantastic chorus, and I went to that rehearsal, and I walked in the back. In the back was a table with scores, sharpened pencils, and a CD chart. Every chair was perfectly placed. A music stand in front of every single chair. And there were 175 singers in the chorus. And a music stand in front of every single chair. And a seating chart where every single person was to sit. And Dwayne Wolf, whom I know, and we were chatting afterwards, he said, you know, I can't, union rules say I can't hear individual people except at audition times. So the only way I can tell how a row is sounding is do a seating chart, and then I can rotate rows. 6th row becomes 1st row this week, and it moves back to the next row. 6th row becomes 1st row, and that way I can hear how those rows are doing. It's the only way I can do it for union rules. So I thought, well, Chicago Symphony Chorus has a seating chart. I should do a seating chart. So I thought, well, I'm going to take a little heat for that one, because people have been sitting next to Rehearsal since the beginning of time, and the tenors are still trying to figure out where their seats are, and so I did a seating chart, and I got very little pushback on it. And what I started hearing was this. I'm so glad to do that, because when I joined the choral union a year ago, I sat down and somebody said, you need to do it, that's my seat. I didn't know anybody, and so I didn't know where to sit. And pretty soon, it just became normal. So I do a seating chart almost every week. If we do, I might do 2 or 3 weeks in the same place, but I'll revamp the seating chart. We have a rehearsal on Monday night. I send it to them on Sunday. Well, I usually send it to them on Friday or Saturday by email, PDF by email, so that they all have it. So they come to rehearsal, they know exactly where they're to sit. And we have somebody who sets up the chairs, and a fellow in the bass section says, sure, I'll set up the chairs. At least finesse where they are, so that people know exactly where to sit. I can control, not necessarily control freak, but I know their voices well enough now that if I'd like a stronger voice in the back, I can put that. If I'd like a softer voice in the front, we can finesse that. It's a long way of saying that it is so helpful, I think, to have a sense of place and a sense of ownership for those people in the choir. So, other components that I would consider of a great rehearsal, the plan itself, include read all the way through the first time. Come what may. Don't stop. Don't prep them ahead of time. Don't stop them in the middle. Go all the way through. If you have a pianist who can help, fantastic. If you're the pianist and you can help, fantastic. Go all the way through. Don't bail them out partway through. They have to jump on and stay the whole way through. And the whole way through, excuse me, I'm thinking, okay, we need to come back to page 2, and I might have dog-eared page page 2, and I knew they'd mess up the top of 3. Okay, I've already figured it out, and halfway through page 4, that's fantastic. I thought they'd mess up there. Great, there's some more energy there. That vowel is truly poor, but we're going to come back there, and we have gone all the way through, and then I know what needs to be worked on. I remember working with him really young when I was in the first stages of my conducting career, and I remember thinking, he's not doing anything. We're just singing through, he's not doing anything. Knowing, figuring out after the fact that he had planned every single rehearsal and every single portion of the rehearsal from that very first read through. Because in this very dramatic, organized way, he was then pacing, okay, we need to spend more time on the second movement, and we need to make sure that we've covered this, and all of that sort of thing, just from what he heard in that time. All the way through, don't stop. The order, the priority, notes and rhythms, text, and musical expression. Maybe not notes and rhythm and text. Maybe just notes and rhythm. Maybe text comes later if the text is difficult or the text gets in the way. Musical expression from the very outset if it becomes natural. But the hierarchy, notes and rhythms, it can't be beautiful if it ain't right. That's a paraphrase. But it has to be right to be beautiful, to make it artistic, to make it say something, to make it tell the story that one has to be wrong. Notes and rhythms, text. So I often will start after that first read-through with a nonsense syllable. Maybe we need to make sure that the rhythms line up. Maybe we need to count sing. I don't do a lot of count singing, but there will be times when we do count sing. Notes and rhythms, text, musical expression. I do, however, firmly believe that we learn the music with the final dream in mind. That we don't put off musical expression to the very end, but we learn it with that. I will also say that we don't, I'm hopeful, at least I try not to in my rehearsals, learn it with the full range of dynamic expression at first. Because when forte singing happens, it has to be the result of piano singing. Great, strong singing needs to be the result of incredibly in tune, beautifully shaped phrases and vowels. If we sing forte from the very outset, number one, the conductor doesn't hear nuance. We don't hear that there are 3 sopranos whose vowel color is not exactly what we want. We don't hear the tenors are slightly under the pitch in that passaggio land from E to F natural. We don't hear the basses really are singing in B flat instead of A natural. All right? Soft singing does that. Soft meaning soft singing, we can hear those sort of very picky things. So I really, and we'll talk about this a little bit with male voice, but I approach forte singing from a piano perspective at the outset. It doesn't mean wimpy. It doesn't mean, that P doesn't mean puny. It means piano, and it really means projected, so that we are absolutely fantastic posture and with breath underneath of every moment. It's important in rehearsal to vary the moods, to vary the tempo, to vary the sitting and the standing, to vary the languages, and to vary the learned and new. We talked a little bit about that. The alternation between fast and slow, the alternation from a great rehearsal is a great meal. We don't start with the steak, probably, in a great meal. Maybe you start with a salad. Maybe you start with some other thing. Maybe you start with an appetizer, and then you progress into the steak and mashed potatoes if you're a good person. No, I'm joking. If you're a carnivore, or into the tofu if you're not a carnivore, and to the heart of the rehearsal. And then at the very end, we all need some dessert. All the time, we need a little dessert. And that dessert doesn't have to be a lot of dessert, but it needs to be something that maybe we know better, maybe we know, maybe we can become knowing that. I used to, every summer when I would go to Interlock and do the choir, we had to make something beautiful in that first 30 minutes. Something had to be beautiful in that first 30 minutes. The warm-up with a new choir is always going to be longer than with a choir that we know, so maybe the warm-up the first time is a little bit longer than that, but we have to make something beautiful. We have to taste beauty, and then we have to want it. There has to be the carrot that says, I want that all the time. I want to have that beautiful sound all the time. And 90% of our singers have no idea what beauty is. And that's why we're in front of them, because we have experienced it more than they have. You can't experience real beauty in a choral setting from the inside. The beauty happens on the outside when you're on it. Because when we're in the inside, we hear it in a different way. We hear it from a very personal way, but the conductor hears it from the group way. Rule of golden proportions applies in rehearsals as well. The rule of golden proportion is about 2/3 of the way through, that's the climax. About 2/3 of the way through of a mystery, things are going to start winding up. That's the rule of golden proportion. If you look at almost every single Bach fugue, and if it's 100 bars long, look around bars 65 to 70. That's probably when the stretto is going to start happening. If you were playing two-part inventions like most of us did at some point in life, that's the place where you couldn't play it very well. And your fingers were getting all wrapped up, and afterwards then it sort of comes back and it's okay, you're back, you're all right. But that's the rule of golden proportion. That is true in rehearsals as well. If it's an hour-long rehearsal, know that the very best, most productive time is going to be from 30 to 45 minutes after. If it starts at 3 o'clock, from 3:30 to 3:45, the best stuff is going to happen. After that, people get a little tired. Before that, they're probably not all on your train yet. Really, really important. Now, if the rehearsal is 2.5 hours, that's a different pacing, meaning that the golden proportion is going to be a little different because you probably have a little break in there. If you have a break in the middle of a rehearsal, then maybe you have 2 golden proportions in that rehearsal. But it is truly important. Nothing we do in rehearsal is normal. As I've said before, we don't sit this way in real life. I don't speak this way in real life. I don't breathe this way in real life. I would hope the choir doesn't sit that way in real life. I hope the choir doesn't have to breathe that way in real life. I hope that spaciousness is not this way in real life. I hope we sing that way, but we don't have to talk that way. But we do have to sing that way for it to be as beautiful as we know that we can make it. No waste of time. Leave having experienced something gorgeous and more beautiful than we experience in our daily lives. It's a gift that we give to those people who come to sing. That we can experience something beautiful together. That those tunes that bore into our head that we can't get rid of are worthy. But they're not about McDonald's Big Macs. But they are worthy to be stuck in there. So we're going to warm up a little bit. And then we're going to sing. I'll do a few different warm-ups than we did last time. Let me just say how much I hate warm-ups. With all of my heart, I hate doing warm-ups. And with the Chamber Choir at Michigan, I almost never do warm-ups because it's in the middle of the day, they've all been practicing, they've all had their diction classes, they know what a beautiful vowel is, but we just don't, there are issues we don't have to talk about. With choral union that comes from being a mom, to being a teacher, to being a lawyer, to being whatever, and we come together one night a week, and we need to get on the same page. And so that page needs to be the page that we all agree on, meaning the sound that I think is beautiful. And we have to do something to get us on that page. Whatever that is, it might have to do with rhythm, yes. It might have to do with figuring out what the conductor does, yes. It might have to do with breath, yes. It might have to do with articulation, absolutely. It might have to do with vowel color, no question. It might have to do with range extension, absolutely. It might have to do with passaggio management, absolutely. All those things can be tasted in a warm-up. For most of us, we are the voice teacher of those singers and choirs with whom we work. Some will be taking private lessons, that's fantastic, but for most, we are that person that will help them to sing better. And it's always a compliment when someone says, my voice felt good tonight. That's great. It's because of you that their voice felt good tonight. Because you engendered breath, you engendered spaciousness, you engendered energy, you engendered lift, you engendered all those good posture, all of those sort of things. It didn't just happen because their acid reflux was under control or something. It was because of the environment that you create. So we'll warm up a little bit. So stand, please. And I'll give a chair so you can see. Join me, find me, right? Find me. But I always say young singers don't look at my eyes, look at my hands, because what do young singers do? They look you right in the eye. That's fantastic. It's great. Look at my hands, right? Find me. Good. Oh, yes. Quick learners. I like that. Excellent. Good. Fill the room with this sound. Now, I'm going to explain a few things as we go, which I would never do in a warm-up because it's too much talking about. I'm just going to explain a few things. This is another sound that I would like the choir to experiment, particularly in the piece that we're going to rehearse. Here's a piece. That's a piece. That's a sound. That's an articulation. Here's another one. Here's another one. There are moments in this piece that have this. Notice how we're all staying together. That's fantastic. Notice how your posture is fantastic. And your feet are slightly apart and one slightly in front of the other. With young singers, they'll always go. It's so cool. I still have them. That's fantastic. I thought I left them at home. It's so cool. Actually, what they're doing is saying, like my shoes. That's what they're usually saying. It's like my recent story. Right? This is your breath supply. Join me. Join me. This is your breath. This is what you sing from. And it's right here. It's right in your belly. And this is what's up. Join me. It's never this. Join my posture too. That's fantastic. This is the whatever sound. Yeah, whatever. This is, want to hear me sing? Join me. This is, I'm a little nervous. Want to hear me sing? Join me. I'm even nervouser. Nervouser? I left my grandma at home, but she's doing fine. I sometimes call this a very large alien in a small box. Or that's your breath. A very large alien in a small box. And the large alien would like to do this. But your breath is your energized that and you put it in this incredibly beautiful box. And you let it escape as much as you'd like it to. Good. Good. Fantastic. Shoulders all the way up. Great. Touching your ears. Some of you can do that. That's weird. Good. And slumping. And then scratching. Okay, perfect, fantastic. I don't know why the basses are always the best at that. Okay, but it's true. Basses are, sopranos are not so good at that, but the basses just feel comfortable with that. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Now, parenthetically, we've engendered a few smiles in this last 30 seconds, and that was my goal. All right, shoulders all down. And back, down. Right. If you remember to slightly aim your shoulder blades toward each other, that's fantastic. Now aim them the other direction. Good. Now aim your shoulder blades too close to each other. And aim them sort of to each other. I think one time I had some shoulder problems. One of the things that a physical therapist said to me is, aim your shoulder blades to each other. Because what that does, you have a bone that comes across. And you have a couple of tendons that come up here. And that bone, if you do this, the bone rubs on those tendons when you use all of your arm. And the body says, that hurts a little. I don't think I like that. I don't think I'm going to make your arm as comfortable as it used to be. Simply doing this lifts that bone up, and the bone comes off those tendons, and the body says, okay, I can do that for another 10 years or something. That's fantastic. It's great. Oh, you look magnificent. Good. Big motion, big sound, small motion, sound, small sound, articulate motion, articulate sound, gooey motion, gooey sound, short motion, short sound. Does that make sense? All right. Good for you. Good for you. Good. Good for you. 1, 2, T4, 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 1, 2, T4. Use this voice. 1, 2, T4, 1, 2, T4, 1, 2, T4. Join me. 1, 2, T4. Join me. 1, 2, T4. Join me. 1, 2, T. Accent 1. 1, 2, 1. Good. Stable. 1, 2. Accent 1 and T. T4. 1, 2, T4. 1, 2, T4. 1, 2, T4. 1, 2, T4. How about 4 and 1? 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1. Fantastic. We now have some sort of inner pulse going on. Everybody can do that. Everybody in the world can do that. But getting their bodies behind that is really important. You can do that with 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. You get all sorts of pulses going on that really, really help. Okay, count with me. 1 is always down. And you may use this voice. 1 is always down. Good. And your hands will be at your side because I'm like the conductor and you're like the singer. Just want to place our roles. Just get our roles set. And 1. 1. Yes, just 1 is always down. You're going to come on. And 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Good. You're going to come on. It's 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or however. And if it's a big motion, it's a big sound. And if it's a small motion, it's a fantastic. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1. Somehow 2 and 3 are really in your minds. I hear 1, 2, and 3 need love. They're slimy little characters. Give them love.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1.
They can feel love.
1. 1.
I think most of our singers have no clue what we do. And I think most of our singers, which then engenders in us what I do doesn't matter. And I guarantee that every gesture we make makes a difference. Every single gesture we make makes a difference. Every word we say makes a difference. Did I tell you about the conductors that showed up with the Glee Club? I think I mentioned that. Well, I used to conduct the Michigan Glee Club, and we invited the 5 conductors back to do a piece on the concert. And not one time did one of them say, "Would you sing out of tune for me?" Because they just were there, and it happened. Nobody said, "Can you be just brash and ugly for me?" It just happened. And it was just because of who they were, and the way they stood, and the way they said what they were going to be. Good, 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 good. Sing, we did sing, sing, sing. Can I sit there? Oh, would you grab that sheet for me on the stand? We did this last night with your mother. Would you join me again with your mother? Sing, 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 and a big gesture right here in front. You know, if the sound is a little wimpier than you like, that's a good way to get it more vibrant. Zing, 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 with lots of z, and the NG brings it forward. Zing, 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 zing. And something that says that it should be that, you know, you just need to fix it up without saying you just need to fix it up. But your mother has just said, your room, young man, is a wreck. And zing, 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 zing. Fantastic. And the last note is the what? Softest, sweetest, warmest, the most beautiful. We don't do that naturally. We don't make the last word that we sing. You always. If you listen to the radio, it doesn't happen on the radio. You know why? Because if it did, you'd be turning your radio up all the time. So it has to be squished, so it's in that band. That's why the dynamic level of every piece of music that you hear in the pop style is within this band. It's not going to get too loud, it's not going to get too soft. It's all going to be the same because it wouldn't work in the car. We cannot work in the car and be fantastic because we have from 1 to 10 that we can do zing, 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 zing. Remember your mother? She would want you to point to me. And zing, 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 zing. Yes, whoops, I hear your mother liking last notes to be accented and slightly ugly. All right? My mother, although she's huge, wanted them to be elegant and soft and sweet and warm and beautiful. And sing! Yes! Sing! Your mother just became cultured. That's fantastic. Keep her around. And sing! Yes! Fantastic. Join me right here. This is the sound. The sound of the awe is what I'm hearing. That's fantastic. I hear mum, mum, mum. I hear spaciousness. I hear beautiful beauty in your sound because this, in actuality, is a picture of your soft palate. Without me saying, would you make sure that you lift the soft palate? Would you create space? We've done mum, 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 mum. I might say, fill your hand with sound. Join me. Fill your hand with sound. Sweet, sweet, warm, gentle. Yes. Beautiful. But if you feel the need of love, you could go mummy, 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 mum, and that would just make you feel all warm and cozy. It'd be fantastic. That's a little joke. You should laugh. All right? Join me. Then the last note is going to be softer. Brightness and warmth, and oh, and the sound that will engender is both focus and sweeter, I think. I'm not going to do any more of those. Would you sing smooth? I'm 100% committed to starting on the top and going to the bottom, not going from the bottom to the top, because in the top we have, going from the top to the bottom, we have the chance of carrying head down and not chest up. Because remember Ethel Merman? Ethel is dead because she carried chest voice all the way up. And I it's sad the way she died. It was a horrible death. Somebody who wasn't telling me last night that attended St. Thomas. You told me, yeah, go ahead, tell us that story.
Yeah, I learned in St. Thomas on Fifth Avenue in New York. She'd go to Jerry Hancock and get the organ like a postlude. She'd swing around the corner and say, Jerry, when are you going to let me sing a solo? And he said, oh, I don't know. And she said, how much money do I have to give to sing a solo at St. Thomas? And he said, there's no organ big enough that you could donate ever to sing a solo at St. Thomas Church.
Because she could sing louder than any of them. That's fantastic. Okay, do you want to join me? Good, and I'm loving the sweetness and the gentleness that brings to the sound. Good for you. Ladies, would you go, ooh? Ladies and gentlemen, from the bottom to the top. Ooh, and ooh. Absolutely, from the bottom to the top. And ooh. Yeah, there's no reason that women get own that, because we have passaggio notes to get over as well. Okay, good. And we're going to do one more, and that is tuning the bells. Join me. Join me. Join me. Join me. Beautiful. Hang on a minute. Did you hear the difference in that? Fantastic. Do it again. Join me. Join me here. Join me here. Beautiful. Sing through the circle. Oh. 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 Hear the difference? Oh. Beautiful. You live in Minnesota, you take the boat for donuts, don't you know? Okay. Oh. Absolutely. Oh. Maybe not so beautiful. Oh. Lips pucker. No. Sing through the circle. E. Good for you all. Fantastic. Fantastic. Excellent. Take out the Psalm 23. Take out the Psalm 23, and I know I've talked way more than our time will allow, but we'll take out the Psalm 23. I don't know. Okay. We'll, great. Let's start. Yep, there we go. Cool. Go ahead. We're going to rehearse just a little bit, and then I'll have you again. Remember what we said this morning? Ready? Fantastic. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. One, two. Fantastic. I shall not want. I shall not want. I shall not want. I shall not want. The Lord. The Lord is my shepherd. Fantastic faces. Fantastic. Make sure basis. Here is part of my soul. Make sure those pitches are really, really great. I hope you heard the difference in sound when we spoke in head voice and when we sang. Remarkably changed. The Lord is my shepherd. 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 1, 2. seconds of shelf life. If I would have said, the Lord is my shepherd, it's beautiful. I love the space that you have. I love the sense of direction that you have. It's gone. We've lost any worth that it could ever have. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. We sing it in that shape that we've just done. And it's spacious and beautiful and sweet and elegant. And that's the song I'd like to have in this, particularly in this open passage. Does that make sense? It also, without me saying, I'd like a deeper, warmer, richer vowel, we did it. Without me talking about it, we have shaped that vowel. And when we come over, let's have you play this time. And I know our time is almost done. Basses, when you come in, I'd love to hear warmer, richer, rounder, sweeter. Warmer, richer, rounder, sweeter. There are some colors that I just chose. All right? Okay, we're going to start at the very beginning.
So that every pitch is filled and beautiful. Does that make sense? So that some of them don't feel puny because they're piano, but the glasses are small and they are overflowing with beauty. Would you start, please, 36? Can you start 36? Is that cool? Bring that from your imagination. How do we get it there? Efficiently and focused, with as many possible ideas, with bodies alive, with sound possibilities that they engender with their bodies, with their voices, with their minds. Does anybody have any questions in the couple of minutes that I should have finished? Great. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.